Please request recording permission from the meeting host. Okay. Did you already start recording?
I just did, and now you can record quite soon, so we will be rolling.
It looks like I am recording, although I don't see a timer. I'm just looking at the time on my computer. So I like last time we said we are live. We are
live.
This is it. This is
Welcome.
it, people. Well, I mean, it's not. Depends when we post this, but
Okay,
Glenn. Hey, this is our part 2. Yeah. So it's actually we were talking a little bit before we recorded, but it's our third live conversation. But it's part 2 of our cultural repair series. Let's call it. All right.
Yes. So yeah.
Purple and green shirt. Nice.
Purple and green shirt. Yeah. Yeah. We gotta change the visuals a little bit. Yeah, well,
my headset was getting worse, so I got a new one. So are we ready to go? So we decided on 2 questions.
2 questions that we're going to explore today, which is a follow-up on this theme of cultural evolution that we looked into. Question 1, what would a harmonious global society look like? And question 2, who can...
Hey, wait! It's a surprise. I'll ask it later.
Okay,
I'll ask it when we're halfway through. But remember, Glenn, we were going to do the saying why we're doing this kind of thing. And, well, this question, I think, gets us back to it. What would an harmonious global society look like? And most people, Glenn, you, me, everybody we meet pretty much, they have good intentions. They really would like to see a better world. They really believe that a better world is needed. And this question is to maybe, and in counseling circles, we often have the miracle question, we call it, where, if you went to bed tonight and a miracle happened and your life was exactly the way you wanted it tomorrow morning, describe what that would look like. And it's a great counseling type question. And I think the Homo communia, as a very, very ill species at this time, requires such a question so that we can maybe start imagining different ways to create our future and see that, it is possible if we all cooperate. So what would an harmonious global society look like? And before you answer that, Glenn, tell me the purpose of why you are doing these discussions with me, and then get to this question.
Yeah, actually, the purpose is, for me, very related to what you said, that there's a need for visioning a new way of living, a new way of existing, and a kind of a way of speaking together about what is possible in such a way that it becomes more vivid, and perhaps the path to realizing it becomes clearer. So for me, these conversations are a tool for expanding the mind, but also expanding the mind in a direction which is as useful as possible, so that there can be a shift of the conversation that is happening publicly, away from many of the very distracting topics that don't really lead anywhere, to beginning to explore topics that are really inspiring and practically useful, and whereby making it more and more vivid what is possible for us, we can use that as a beginning to actually create it. So I want to have conversations that are generative, that creates a new reality, basically, and to see if we can use conversations to create a new reality for ourselves, as well as something that can spread out and even build very big ideas and new knowledge and understanding. So the short version of it will be that I see conversations as a tool for becoming more conscious and for living a better life.
I agree with you, Glenn, there that actually having the conversations will elevate people's metapsychology and also reawaken their imagination, because you need the imagination to be there, and you need to have people realize that their imagination often leads to the right scenario, the same scenario, and the correct scenario where, you know, when they answer this question one, you know, the future harmonious global society, that people realize, hey, we are really one. We all really want the same thing. This is a uniting kind of question. And it makes an effort of imagination, which is the beginning. I think the second question we'll ask later is the tougher one, because then it's like, you'll have to do this, I'll have to do this, oh, this will be different in this way. We'll have to swallow our pride. We'll have to push past our comfort zone. We'll have to overcome our intellectual laziness. All these things are hard. But if we start with the uniting that, yeah, we'll all be doing this. I won't be the only one, because then what's the use? And that's why I suffer from species alienation is like, why am I the only one applying certain solutions? And again, what's the use? So we need to imagine this. So that's a great way to start this second talk, where we wanted to focus more on solutions. And so why am I doing this with you, Glenn, is as much as some people might not believe or realize, is I have different thinking tools or different ways or different approaches, and my life is different than theirs, that I can contribute to the greater whole in ways that is very, very different than people realize. And I think they just fear or hate me because maybe they don't have the courage to ask and listen and understand how it's different. But I think that what I'm working on is very useful. And it's nice for me to be doing this with you, because it'll be giving me a chance to hear some of my ideas out loud, bounce them off somebody, and also evolve my thinking in how I see things and how I think solutions should look and how they could be implemented in this question too. So I'm going to start and ask you with this question again, Glenn. What would an harmonious global society look like to you?
Yes. There would be people would generally be happy. That would be one of the obvious things, that there will be an atmosphere that we will experientially feel that things are going in a good way. Things are, we are optimistic, we are smiling, we are generally seeing promise, we're feeling hopeful, we're experiencing gratitude for what is already here. So that's the emotional state is one of happiness, generally speaking. Which also means that even hardships, challenges, difficulties might then be viewed as something that one can grow on and use as a means of learning more personally as well as collectively. So that would be the psychological factor. There would be efficient usage of resources. There would not be waste. It would be environmentally sustainable, and a harmonious relationship between humans and their natural surroundings in general. So a way of existing on the surface of the planet where different systems support other systems. Actually, I talked to a guy once who gave me a very nice definition of permaculture. And he said that permaculture is when you have a system where each part of the system performs many useful functions in regards to the other parts. And that would probably be another typical thing, that that you would have many systems that play many different roles relationally. And there will be a sense that time is never wasted. The activity one's involved in has many layers of value in different directions. So harmony, yes, harmony, that word also brings to mind music, brings to mind sort of beauty. So there is a beauty. There's definitely a beauty to existence. There's a style. There's an elegance. There's even an elegance to how we move, to just how we do things. And that style and elegance is seen and felt and known. There isn't any fear of anything. It's like in a harmonious world, we simply see the world as it is, and we deal with it as it is, and we do the best out of it as we can. So there isn't this resistance against how things are. There isn't this wish that things should be different from what they are. Rather, it's the sense that the way it is now is completely right. And within that, I might also be able to create something new that's even better. So that in a harmonious world, the way we live will be, there will be a continuous development, a learning and improvement perhaps. But that process will be, I mean, it won't be any resistance against something else. Let's put it that way. It will just be like a flowering of what is already here. And showing ever new expressions of what is already here. And expressions of what it means to be a human, for example, to express other sides of ourselves. Obviously, relationships between people will be relationships where one typically always sees the value that somebody brings and the unique talents that they bring and the truth of their experience and their truth of who they are, what they express, a kind of respect for reality, a respect for truth, a love of truth. That will also be a very important part of it. It's sort of the feeling of it.
Okay, Glenn.
Yeah, I think I mentioned
it okay?
Go for it.
Okay. What I got from your answer is nice in the sense that you included everyone. People to be, you started with the word people to be generally happier, and you mentioned a general feeling, knowing things are right and less worries, and the kids. And so you kind of incorporated happiness for everyone, and it's nice. And you talked about scenarios where, of course, self-actualization could be more on the table when, a lot of this happiness and people's needs are met and there's more harmony and balance. And it made me think about some of my answer as well. So, yesterday I cried quite a bit. I finished watching, I canceled Netflix for a few weeks because I was too broke and I might have needed the money for food or something. But I re-engaged it and I finished watching Star Trek Discovery, the last 2 episodes of season 2. And when I cry, I often take the time to analyze where the tears are coming from. So I find out what the thoughts are, because the thoughts come before, and I kind of figure out. And for me, it's like, I love the characters. I wish I had people like this in my life, the Star Trek characters. And it has nothing to do with, because these are written by human people with human feelings, and the human condition is in there, and human thoughts, and relationships and interactions. It has nothing to do with the future or being in outer space or the technology. It's more like responding to a difficult situation. So for me, the movies that make me cry the most are, let's say a pilot was drinking and crashed the plane, but finally admits this in court. Well, doing the right thing for me is an incredibly touching moment. So when I watch these characters who love each other, who are sacrificing for the greater good, and so I just want people like this in my life. And I'm like, why isn't there people like this? And but in Star Trek, there's a lot of lessons to learn. For example, a lot of the problems that occurred in Star Trek are because of relationships or pride or fear and wanting to overstructure things. So for me in the future, I don't see that there's so much control and structure like most societies have now, or most nations have now. Either through fear or through ignorance, there's control, or through distraction, there's control. Through consumption, the monetary paradigm, through religions, human chauvinism, there's a lot of things controlling people to easily give up their humanity. And then I don't see people like this. I mean, there are people that write the characters who actually know the theory of what a human would kind of look like. I don't know if these writers of Star Trek actually in the same similar scenarios, not outer spacey, but let's say in their own lives, would be faced with, having to sacrifice something for the greater good because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes altruistically, not just for genetically their offspring or something like that. Would they be like this in practice? Well, in a future society that's harmonious, I think probably there'd be less scenarios where people need to do this. And it's because they would have done this for quite a long time, and it would have become the norm to automatically do the right thing. For me, and I think kids, I think in general, they naturally know what the right thing to do is. They naturally know collaboration, because most life on Earth evolved through collaboration. It's intuitively in us. Friendship, So for me, when I see a future, I see it a little bit like Star Trek: The Next Generation as well, which is, the monetary paradigm doesn't exist, and it's people pursuing knowledge, pursuing quality and role modeling to others, and the best that they can be. So in a future where we can focus on things like the arts and evolving various types of science because we're curious and it's the right thing to do, and it's not because we fear our mortality, or we're pursuing science of military weaponry because we have paranoia about people who are just really like us, really. So, these things are gone, and we're pursuing knowledge for the pure joy of it. And there's more harmony through just whatever emerges naturally out of it, instead of overly structuring things like teaching kids, code or things like that at a young age. It's really not being human anymore. It's being repetitive and obsessive about doing the same thing that we all know intuitively doesn't work, and doing more of what doesn't work, or more intensely, or with more denial, doesn't fix things. So in the future, for me, I see that even schools are less structured. Kids might pursue whatever they're good at, or they enjoy, or learn in their own way, and kids will teach each other, will teach the teachers. There's a lot of role modeling of lifelong learning at various levels, and I see this as being a joy. Just kids might naturally, actually, a lot of them might want to pick up music in some way without being forced to, or sports without being forced to, because the bullying is gone, the competitiveness is gone, and in this society, it's just humans can be the best they can be. I love this Jewel song that says that we were made to love, horses were made to run. So, and it does come naturally to us. And love is not just love ourselves or another person or an animal or the sun rising. It's loving the moment, the inherent value of the moment, which would be, again, our natural ability to connect with nature. Now, people say, oh, no, Martin, I think what you're proposing is going back to the caves, living in a cave. No, there's still cultures on Earth who haven't lost this ability, where they're in the woods, and in the woods, they can even have their eyes closed, and they can sense the environment. They can sense, who and what is moving. It could be a wind, a moisture, humidity, a bird, insects. They could sense their environment in a way that they're connected to it. Well, that's love. You love.
Oh yeah.
The inherent value of the moment, the space and time that brought your consciousness to being, and that's beautiful. And I was in a mall in Courtenay, British Columbia, and I'm, before Christmas, I'm doing some homework after, I think, tutoring a student math, and I'm noticing this older couple walking around this ugly statue made of metal, of a shape, and they're looking at it, they're studying, they have comments. And I think it's so sad. It's so sad that they're doing this for a useless piece of metal. And I'm not saying art is not good. I'm just saying, I was imagining that based on their conversation, that I don't think they would take their grandkids into the woods and look at a frog or an insect or a bird's nest or the way a river was flowing and study it in this way, this natural setting where we're all from and we're all connected to, compared to, how this statue would fit in their room, in their living room, and the price of it. It was so insane. It was so inhuman, what I saw. And yet this is such a common thing. So for me, in the future, is we are awed by what we used to be, or what we should be, or what is naturally the right thing to be awed by. And it's not, how tall a building is, or how fast a car can go, or what a 12-cylinder engine sounds like. This is, a form of mental illness, to be awed by this, when there's so much of the natural world that's evolved for billions of years that is still there around us for us to discover. And imagine having a grandkid. I'd love to have a grandkid, and spending time and seeing the awe and wonder in their eyes, and then knowing that even after 100 years, it's still only part of what is already here on this planet to be just amazed by, that has been evolving here for so long. So I see a future where this is more normal human behaviors. So that's one way to answer this question. I'm going to ask you the same question again. So give me maybe a different way to answer this question. Maybe give me, because I'm going to remember what you said before and maybe phrase it slightly differently. What would an harmonious global society look like? Well, maybe something we both didn't talk about is how the different parts of the world, different societies, you can call them nations or countries, or ethnicities or demographics, how would they interact with each other in this harmonious world? I'm now asking you.
Yeah. Just before answering that, follow up what you said there, sounded almost like seeing everything as art. Art will be everywhere. You can really be in awe at everything. How would the different groups relate to one another? I mean, if you have at least 7 billion people, everyone won't know everyone else. So you will have, groups who do special things and others who do strange things that seem strange. Generally, there will be a system in place for the basic necessities. I see a very simple system for the food, for the housing, for transport, very simple, goes by itself. We don't have to think about it. So there isn't any um, shortage of, let's say, what's very important. So in that sense, you you don't have to have that impression that someone else will come and take something. In a sense, so basically, yeah. How will we look at the strangers? I think we'll look at them as interesting, as fascinating creatures that we don't know so much about, or people of other um,
Are you talking
ideas.
about people from another country? So
Yeah, yeah.
are you saying we would see them with awe like they're part of nature?
Yes, we will see everyone as part of nature and ourselves.
Wonder,
Yeah,
wonderful.
I think so, definitely. It won't be the separation between humans and nature. That's for me is quite clear. It will be a real sense that we're all a part of nature. So when you see another person, I guess we will maybe see them as a whole world of life in themselves that have secrets that I don't know about and that I can learn from and that I could in many ways get inspired by. Yeah, that will definitely be a theme in the more harmonious world I see, that everything is seen as part of nature, and everything is even like an expression of art. And it's almost like, because you mentioned this example of looking at a statue and seeing that as art, it's quite an interesting thing. If we have that ability, we probably have that ability with anything. And so yeah, why not have the same point of view in regards to other
Well,
countries, other nationalities?
one of the most complex things we know is the human brain, and it gets programmed differently, from where you're from or who your parents are or what your influences are and what you learn and how you respond with decisions to all of these stimuli. So that is much more complex than a statue, and of course should be able to create a lot of sense of wonder and awe. And a lot of people are almost addicted to reading biographies or watching the lives or hearing about the lives of other people. And there is a phenomenon that makes people feel better about themselves, like Jules says as well, watching somebody's life that is worse than you. But I'm talking about the complexity of a different brain, of a different life lived in a different way. And I'm going to refer to Robert Sawyer. He has a book called Factoring Humanity. And in there's a concept of the overmind, I think is one way to put it, and where people develop the ability to see the life of somebody else through their eyes, and it's there's a great sense of awe and wonder there's many years to come of studying and enjoying and learning from this. And this is, or it should be, in the future, if we haven't achieved it yet, it looks like, is when we can actually improve communication and language to the human level, then we will be able to not have to go in each other's brains to look through, as we can actually communicate and pay attention and have this sense of wonder where we would learn from somebody else's life and learn what it's like without having to, say I'm going to be reincarnated into this and I can learn about it later. We don't have to say stuff like this. We can just have a human conversation using language, even with somebody that doesn't share the same language, because technology could help us translate, or our nonverbal communication, or just our advanced observation skills, which were there before when we were hunter or gatherers, and we needed to really pay attention to our surroundings to be able to feed our village, or to learn about things related to farming that were good or bad, that was going to work or not work. And we needed to learn about nature in those times, and it was survival was dependent on it. So in a future where we don't learn by necessity, by survival, as we learn by wonder and awe, yeah, I think most people would be a lot happier. And so the second question would be, Glenn, are you ready? We go to the second question.
Yeah, well, just before that, um, you, yeah, the main theme that I hear us both come to is this with a feeling of awe and a joy of learning in itself as an expression. I also wanted to just ask you, what do you think about more practically, if we want to make this easy to imagine, how do we relate with machines, for example? How do we relate with information technology? That's also what would be a harmonious way for us to do that. It's also feels like it's important to fill in because information technology has become such a big part of our lives. And I don't feel, for example, that if I'm walking on the street and I'm looking into this little machine, that isn't what I would call a harmonious relationship, especially. Uh, I could certainly, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, what would be a harmonious relationship between humans and machines and information technology, especially?
So, Glenn, as we interact with each other and we have conversations, we're faced with, hundreds, thousands of choices, even in just 90 minutes. And none of them are at the conscious level, but that's just because we don't have the thinking tools or training to bring more of them at the conscious level. But I am conscious that I can choose to answer that question or not. And I'm going to choose to not answer that question because I don't think the problem is I think is why are we not connecting with nature more? Now, there's so much research that shows that people develop a motivation to want to recycle more or clean up things or not be part of the problem as much when they spend more time in nature. So yeah, but then I would be asking myself, well, why do we need to kind of almost use psychology to fool people to, where's the common sense that they should already know? And part of it is probably they spend too much time with technology. And so
Yeah,
I don't want to promote, I think that just is a tendency people have. It's an easier attention addiction, attention deficit addiction, because we are closer to that paradigm. It comes more simply to us. But
yeah,
the one that is really where our survival and this harmonious society lies is not, how can we teach even all the grandmas in the world to use computers? I don't think that's where the solution is. The solution is, how can we all see we're interconnected and
yeah,
interconnected in a way that, you know, our needs, basic needs, shelter, food, they should not be hard to meet, and 7 billion people. A lot of people don't want to say it, but and they would make me the bad guy for saying this, but it's too much. It's too much. It's too much, and it's unfair to the system. Now, when I say this, it doesn't mean that I'm coming to kill your babies, okay? Because I probably care about your babies, and I'm probably better with your babies than you are. So, and I probably shed a lot more tears about the future that's coming for your babies than you are in your denial. So, and I'm saying I'm talking about the 9 out of 10 nice people in society. So what I'm saying is, if we want this quality of life, we have to realize there's a contradiction between, well, just like democracy and capitalism can't exist in the same society. They're contradictions. You can't have both. And if you believe you can, well, you're been nicely brainwashed. We might talk about this kind of stuff when we cover certain other topics later. But so
mm.
so help me, bring me back to where I was, Glenn.
Yeah.
So what was I saying before
Well,
I was
you
talking about
you talked about
contradictions.
being closer to nature, which is a theme that I think both of us put a lot of weight on in trying to imagine what a harmonious future would be. So I just wanted to briefly say that I see a future where we don't even have computers. where the information technology is in the background and just feeds us what we need, and we can have our hands free. We can see. We
Is
can.
that
Yeah.
That's where you were going with that part, is to actually not make it part of the individual's life so much. It's more like running things to save us some time, not to be spending on this, so we can focus more on quality human connections.
Yes.
And I was talking about quality human connections requiring a lower amount of people. And how to bring that about? Well, how to bring it about is how do people numbers grow? Well, they grow through reproduction, right? Offspring. So more and more people now have become baby factories and not parents, and then there's less and less quality in the, not only the lives of their kids, the quality of life, but also the quality of humanity or thinking tools in the generation's brains as it keeps going like this. So if we can stop having as many babies, now that doesn't mean, there's a lot of ways to do this that is going to be gradual, but we must agree. And some societies actually still have benefits where they have bigger families, but again, are they thinking globally when they're acting locally? So we need to support them in some ways. So we need to spread things about so the quality is good. And there's no way everybody can live the lives, that like Americans or even Canadians are living, with such a big area and consuming so many things. So we need to bring numbers down, and this could be done gradually. And people are going to say, well, the economy is built that, my retirement is paid in this way. Well, first of all, your retirement is going to kill you. A lot of people don't do well with retirement. It's better if they work less hours during their life, and then they work a little bit part-time, because they're social creatures. They need to get their social interactions. I've seen seniors at Tim Horton do a better job and smiling a lot more than teenagers. And they're doing more hours, and they're happy. They're happy because they're productive, they're busy, they're interacting, they're in conversations, they're useful, and they're not getting heart attacks because they're actually, if they have good bosses and reasonable schedules, is they are actually exercising their minds and their brains, and that's a lot healthier than accumulating a large amount of assets or consumering kind of behaviors and suddenly keeping them up, and the stress of outliving your retirement fund or things like that. So for me, appreciating the wisdom of the seniors and learning more from them, and of course giving them a choice, to work a little bit part-time, so that even the kids that are working full-time can now start working a little bit part-time, focus on better quality education, focus on what makes them special and unique and innovative in ways that their generation will need a lot more than the grandparent generation. They'll need to work on their solutions because they're motivated more. They'll be living through it. So that's what I wanted to say, is the numbers are too high, and the numbers at this height, again, like we talked about before, you're talking about nutrients, you're talking about biological mass, you're talking about, more loss of diversity or species extinction if we keep the numbers this high. It's not just about the quality of this harmonious future we're imagining, where, there needs, the planet is finite. It is. I mean, once I had a Jehovah's Witness at my door, and interesting conversation, and eventually she said, well, you never know. And I was talking about, hey, you're kind of training your kid, and I wasn't talking about religion this way. I'm training your kid to kind of go to work and continue this monetary paradigm and consume resources, having babies, blah, blah, blah. And you say, do you agree we have one planet? And she said, well, you never know. We might find, another one to get to someday. And then I said, is this in your Bible? And I said, no. And she kind of wanted to change her answer. But in a way, you could see two, conflicting paradigms that are evolutionary dead ends kind of coexisting at the same time. That the consuming, the growing, we'll just go consume another planet, then another planet, then another planet. And just live the same kind of life. And again, is like God will provide or whatever. So there's no sense of responsibility for our actions. And I think we need to bring the numbers down and focus on each other's happiness, not just our own. And that there's no deadline for when to stop going to school if you don't want to stop. You know, there's no deadline for when to work or not, or do arts, or how many hours a week. It has to be like this. If I was president of a country, it wouldn't be like being in the military is mandatory, is teaching something for a year, whatever, becoming the teacher of something for a year, either driving or farming or dancing. It has to be part of everybody's life, and make sure that they continue the philosophy of being lifelong learners. And that's what being human is about. It's not consuming the whole planet. You know,
So
it's
maybe,
about just the joys of growing and self-actualizing.
Yeah, so it almost sounds like what you're describing is a society where almost education and work is the same thing. It's just one activity that you're involved in. You're doing something fun, meaningful. You're creating something beautiful, and you're learning, and you're together with others.
I use the word vocation, because for me, vocation can be work, can be school, can be volunteerism. And vocation for me grows and evolves, and it's based on what we're motivated to do at the time, and it has a balance of different things. So vocation is what gets us out of bed, you know, and it needs to be flexible, and it needs to match the person. It needs to be in a society where there's not so many limits. And then you're looking at a productive society that measures its success on happiness, not on GDP, right?
Yeah. We can also say even something like high quality activity or multi-purpose activity. Perhaps the whole concept of work or education will just morph into this just high quality activity, basically. Um, I can definitely see
more
that.
physical stuff.
Yes, and physical stuff.
If you go in different cultures, let's say somebody goes on a trip around the world, and the focus is seeing what kind of various activities old people between 80 and 85 will do. Well, the variety of things you'll see around the world, activities that they will do, either work related or just getting food in the house or whatever, is or you know, dance clubs or badminton or whatever it is you'll be amazed at what you didn't realize. Old people can still participate, learn new things, and do well quality. I'm not just talking about, oh, I can play all sports. Yeah, but you don't know the rules or play very well at any of them. So quality is possible, but there needs to be a society of less stress, less pressure, that you can focus on the quality.
Oh yes.
And that again is away from the monetary paradigm a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I see that too. No stress, no rush. It's going to be flowing along, and probably various kinds of activities. And I also see sort of symbiosis between the natural and the artificial. That we also begin to think of our machines and creations as a part of the natural world, as being interacting in the natural world. So for example, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we're not just talking about something inside of a machine, we're talking about something that exists also in our brains and between us and in the activity and in the whole field of action, basically. So maybe in a more harmonious world, the general theme is unity, including unity between the physical and the theoretical, so that it's just seen as a unified field of life where everything is interacting with everything else, and where there's a harmonious interaction. So perhaps one of the big simplifications we can come upon is that we don't need to have all of these complicated divisions. That is work, that is education, that is
Yeah,
distancing,
and
etc.
that's part of human domestication, right? It's part of HSD. Is we believe, most of us believe, you need to tell a kid they need to learn, or you need to tell somebody go to work, otherwise you won't eat. You know, naturally people know what to do. They have a curiosity already at a young age, and if
Yeah,
you force it on them, or if you put too much structure, and if you're, you know, you kind of don't even realize the strengths and weaknesses that some people have, and you label them in ways, well, you're outside of the norm, and the way you learn about this is you're actually doing more harm than good to the concept of learning, not only to that child but to your entire society.
yeah,
So these things come naturally. A kid knows how to be a kid, and you know, you don't need to say to somebody that's pregnant, oh, or somebody that, you know, wants to buy a car, you'll need to do this, or, you know, people know how to set their own goals, and they have to set the ones that are based on what their motivations are, their priorities are, their interests are, and the structures can be more fluid like this, and can be more amalgamated with what is naturally a human.
yes. Hmm. There was just a glitch in the recording here for some reason.
Hello, Glenn, you're still there?
Yes, there you're back. There
Okay,
was
it was my internet issue. Looks like it might be fixed now. So I don't know if you were hearing the last part I was saying is let's say we live in a society where a kid or their parents together decide, hey, you know, our kid kind of, I think, is good doing their own thing, or we have a family structure like this, or this is happening in our family right now, that it's probably better our kid goes and spends time with the grandparents right now. What if someone want to start school 1 or 2 years later, and someone want to start earlier, and they're capable of it, and there's a way they can prove they're capable of it? Now we have a society that would make these choices very complicated. There'd be a lot of people going to court just to exercise these rights to be human in this way. And this is most countries in the world that consider themselves developed. And again, I'm a social scientist, so when I evaluate a country for being developed or underdeveloped, it's in the social sciences. So I would consider my country, Canada, very underdeveloped, especially if you study their educational cultures. So it's not about, you know, having bridges or plumbing or things like that. That's you know, that's not as hard to do as creating a human baby, you know, a
yeah,
human child.
yeah, and a really harmonious process, basically, that you're describing, where you can be flexible, very flexible, and
Then
yeah,
individuals start existing as individuals anymore. Because your first idea, Glenn, was everybody's happy. Well, how can somebody not be happy, or how can they be happy if they're not acknowledged as the individual they are?
yes,
Now, I'm going to put a link with this video, and you can put it when you post it as well. I'm going to put a link, and I'm going to refilm it because I had complaints. Oh, your video is kind of hard to follow. And but I wrote something after I've been on Vancouver Island for 14 years. I wrote a little autobiographical